This is Civil Discourse Now. We're back for the third segment. This book, Mark, first of all, let's clarify for our viewers.
It can be obtained at Big Hat Books in Broad Ripple.
That's what I was going to ask about.
Yeah, or you can go on Amazon.com, look up my name, Mark Small, and it'll pull up this and another book I wrote, 1975, a fictionalized account of a year in the life of a college sophomore.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Do you remember your college sophomore year?
You're a pip. Hey.
Pip. Anyway, we're talking about we have a mutual fascination with rats, I believe, and the rats show up and they're a rather prominent feature of your book.
And they were kind of prominent in that what the Cooks did, they had bought these properties, and my old man filed mechanics liens, and in part settlement, he got a couple of farms. One of the farms was north of Galveston, Indiana. And you'll know that this is from Indiana because it's not Galveston, it's Galveston. Galveston is located about 15 miles north of Kokomo. And north of Galveston, about a mile, was this farm that he took possession of, but he didn't get to take possession of it for about 6 months. And they had relatives or friends or somebody living on the property who, before they left, 6 months before, deposited about a ton of grain on the floor of one of the barns. Now, if you rats eat grain, and rats are rather voracious in their appetite. If you deposit a ton of grain on the floor of a barn in a rural area, any place in the United States, there are going to be rats with party hats coming from several counties around. And so we had massive infestation of rats. Like they don't have them now. Hog enclosures now on farms are like metal fences you can move around. The old-fashioned kind were concrete walls about this thick. And a rat's front teeth grow, incisors or whatever they are, and they have to chew them off and constantly gnaw or else they'll grow into their flesh. And so these rats gnawed rat runs through these concrete hog enclosures. So you'd see these little runs for the rats to go through. Another thing is, if you see a rat, rats don't like people. They know that we don't like them generally. And if you see a rat, the rule of thumb is there are about 100 rats within 50 or 100 foot radius of you, under the ground and all over the place. And they're nocturnal. They don't like coming out in the daytime. I was sitting on the hood of my old man's car, Pontiac Catalina with a fastback, I remember that. Sitting on the hood of his car in the middle of the afternoon, and 4 rats walked by me and looked at me like, who the hell was I? And they're big. They're big suckers. They're body that big. And so we had to do something about the infestation problem of the rats, and so that was a whole problem in itself.
My sophomore year of college, I went to Ball State, didn't get a place on campus, lived at an old lady's house along with a couple other students, actually a professor as well. I found, after living there a little bit, that the house had rats, and I notified the homeowner, and she said, oh, they're back. And she didn't seem as bothered by them as I did, so I put out rat poison, and the first time I put it out, they ate not only the rat poison, they ate the box too. That happened the second time, and finally the third time. It was the third time before we actually saw a dead rat.
Well, here's the problem with setting out poisons. Rats will sniff the whiskers of their fellows who are dead, and if they catch a scent of something that they haven't caught before, if it's new in the environment, they won't eat it. So when you set out certain toxins, they're only effective so long because the rats will sense, well, now we've got a toxin in the environment. So we tried shooting them, which is difficult. We went into the barns one night, and me, Mr. Anti-Gun Person, with...
I hope you used a shotgun.
Well, I did, but other people didn't. Had a high-powered lamp, and you go in and flick it on. You hear the rats out on the floor, and you flick it on, and they freeze, and you just start firing away One of the people had an automatic rifle. Well, you can only do that so many times because the rats will know just to stay down in the holes. Then we used poison, but the rats got wise to the poison, and so we finally got this toxin, and it caused the rats to be really thirsty after they ate it, and it would cause the scent to be wiped off their little whiskers, and then that seemed to really. But you've got the problem then of them developing a resistance. You know, those rats that aren't killed by that toxin will live on, and so the toxin only has a certain life.
Interesting. Let's talk about some of the other characters in your book. You had a doctor named Gans. Was that
yes.
based on a real person?
That
who was apparently not that interested in practicing medicine.
Dr. Gans is an amalgamation of every pre-med person that I thought was just shamelessly interested in GPAs and money in undergrad. And so it's a fictionalized character based on reality. Greedy bastards who really don't care to practice medicine. That's a large portion of the medical community.
Correct. You had a newspaper editor.
Yeah, and there was a newspaper editor that was. What
was his name?
I forget it in the book, and I forget his name now at this point. But he had done a startup of a newspaper to compete with the Kokomo Tribune, and was not successful in that endeavor. But he had some other things that he had done, and he ended up doing time, federal time. And he wrote a book. I read his book. It was called Face Down in the Succotash.
Yeah, I found that interesting because he seemed like he was a minor player in the scandal. Now, according to your book, he agreed to take money in exchange for
advertising. Well, yeah, but that's a fictionalized aspect.
Okay. What was he actually prosecuted for?
There was something to do with the purchase and security interests of printing presses in his business, and the way in which they disposed of those.
Okay.
But one person in there that I fictionalized. There was one guy that all he was like a supervisor on job sites, and he was a really damn good supervisor on job sites. Made sure that everything was done on time, and he was a person. And my old man called him a straight shooter. And if my old man called somebody a straight shooter, that meant they were kind of old-fashioned and did their jobs and their work. He got sucked into it, and he spent time. And he lost his house and everything. And that was just because he bought into their investment.
You have a gentleman in the book named Hart, a bank president?
Yes, and that's a fictionalized, because he has no heart. That's a fictionalized aspect.
Okay. Was it fictionalized about what they would do in terms of they would buy into these trusts and they would take the certificates and go get loans from the bank?
In part.
Okay.
But that's what's happened recently with the mortgage loan situation.
Right, and we have that going on not only nationwide,
but that wasn't a major aspect of it at the time. But they were collateralizing interests. Okay, interesting.
Who are some of the other characters in the book?
Well, one guy was a guy who took. Anytime I met somebody who claims to be in Mensa, I always question whether they know how to spell Mensa. And so one of the characters in the book takes an IQ test, and there's a donut smudge on the test results that get to Mensa, and they think it's a 1 instead of not being anything, and he had like an 81 IQ. Instead, they think it's a 181. They declare him a genius, and he's anything but. That was kind of
and this was the individual who wanted to be on the Chicago Police Department.
Yeah, wanted to be on the Chicago Police Department and wanted to solve the crime of the century. And then there's a hooker in there, and that was.
I think there was more than one hooker. There's Mama's. Was that?
Yeah, Mama's. Actually, Mama's was supposed to have existed. I don't know that it did, but it was rumored to have existed. But if it didn't exist in Kokomo, it did in Logansport, Indiana, and so that was kind of an institution up there. But those those aspects of life in mid-north Indiana were as accurate as I could make them.
Okay. At one point, some of the characters in the book, they went to Vegas.
And that actually, now, realize
invested in a casino.
they helped build the Aladdin Casino. Now this is where it was kind of cool. My old man couldn't take a tape recorder into meetings, but he could take me, and I was a 12-year-old geek. And so my old man flew down to Dallas, and this was November of 1966. And our host was the guy that was doing a lot of the research on on the natural gas properties in Texas. And we went into his office one day, and he said, well, to my old man, he goes, well, now, Mark wants to sit out here. Marilyn will take care of Mark. You know, we'll go in and do business. And my old man said, no, he'll be fine. If he gets restive or anything, a little restless, we can send him out, but he should be okay. Well, I'm listening to these people talk about how they built the casino in Vegas, and these guys come in like white on white shirts, and they say, basically, we're giving you a one-time offer. And this is what I heard. Whether this was true on what occurred, I don't know. But I heard the story was, these guys came in and said, we'll run your casino for you for X percentage of the profits. Mm-hmm. We'll man it, run it, and everything. And these guys from Indiana said, we're not hicks. We know how to run business.
Right.
And they were not able to get anybody to work in the casino. And so they ended up tanking it, because they had to sell it, their interest, I think, for like $2 million.
And in your book, someone immediately after they bought the casino, someone shows up and says, hey, I can run it for you, it's a one-time offer. Then they turn them down, and then immediately the government swoops in and says, oh, you're not doing this, and they shut down the casino.
To my knowledge, a lot of that happened. A lot of it's fictional.
There was corruption in Vegas, are you saying?
Oh, I would never accuse a public official in Las Vegas of being corrupt. But from what I remember, and this was fascinating, and you got to realize the day that I'm listening to this is autumn of 1966, November 1966. We've been sitting there all day, and this is like 3 years after President Kennedy was assassinated. Well, it was news. I mean, not his assassination, but every day you'd read things about the assassination or claims by Garrison in New Orleans that he was going to bring charges and all sorts of stuff. And so we're sitting there all day in this office. We get done, and our host said, Mark, the day's been ours, the night's yours. What do you want to do here in Dallas? And I said, I'd really like to see Dealey Plaza. And he said, okay. And my old man said, well, we need to stop at your house first, because I got to change shirts and kind of freshen up. And which my old man just meant he changed from one Van Lawn shirt to another. So we went over to our host's house. I see we're running out of time on this segment.
Okay, that completes segment 3 of Civil Discourse Now. We will come back and do segment 4.
It changed, and